Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers for Wednesday, December 29th, 2021. Hopefully these games get in tonight in the bowls. We'll talk about that in just a second. The debacle of the Holiday Bowl last night. But we have 3 bowl games scheduled for today. We'll talk bowls and college football with Brian Edwards coming up in just a moment. But before we get to Brian, and we've told you about them every day on this show, BetMGM. They are the king of sportsbooks. New players only. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line. And if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, new players only, must be 21 years or older to play. And eligible in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. All right, let's bring on our man. If he can't do it, no one can. Brian Edwards.
What's up? What's up, K-Rod?
Hey, really quick before we get into all this stuff, just because let's just bury this now. What happened with the Gators in the Gasparilla Bowl? Why did they suck so bad?
Oh, man. No excuses, man. Good way to go, UCF. State champs. State champs.
They are the self-proclaimed state champions of the Sunshine State. But also, you know what it is, Brian? One thing, then we'll move on, okay? That sequence, I should say, with the onside kick, which was a very well executed onside kick. They banged it off the guy, how no one recovered it. You had what do you call it? Unsportsmanlike conduct or something, like a 15-yard ridiculous penalty on that drive and a drop pick in the end zone. Like everything that could have gone wrong for the Gators in like that 3 minutes went wrong for them.
Yeah, that happened all year. UCF and South Carolina were the only teams to out-yard the Gators, which means nothing. Florida just had they didn't have any interceptions that night. I don't even think we turned it over that night, but just special teams, gaffes, dropped picks, just penalties, so undisciplined, so undisciplined. It was a terrible football team. I'm so glad I never have to watch it again.
Well, we'll see what Billy Napier does. We'll see if he's got magic coming up next season. Let's move on to the bowls. All right. This really annoys me, Brian. I have no connection to NC State. I have no connection to UCLA. But yesterday, seeing the news in the afternoon of the Holiday Bowl getting canceled, where, again, it's not a woe is them or whatever, but, you know, UCLA goes from LA to San Diego. That's a bus trip. They're fine. NC State goes across the country. This is a big game for them. Big stage on Fox last night at Petco Park. And they find out hours before the game that UCLA, they have COVID issues on their defensive line, this, and that. And then, of course, the story comes out that they were at SeaWorld the day before. They were on that naval ship the day before. I don't know when they got COVID, but I'm sorry, Brian. How can UCLA not have other players available to play? It's like, too bad. You're playing these guys on defense. You got to field some kind of team. What did you think about how that whole thing went down?
Don't apologize to me. No need to be sorry. I thought NC State was such a great pick. UCLA was 0-4, but straight up and against the spread in their last 4 games against teams that made bowl games. 3 of those losses were at home. 2 of them were by double-digit margins. They had not beaten a team that qualified for a bowl since week 1 against LSU, and LSU had to rally in the last 30 seconds to beat A&M to get bowl eligible. I thought NC State was such a great pick. I was irate when I saw that news, and and about the traveling, I mean, it's kind of like Clemson and Virginia going down to your alma mater in Tallahassee last year and them forfeiting hour or 2 before kick.
Forfeit? I mean, I look at it more as precautionary.
All of a sudden it goes, wait, you just flip the script, man, big time.
No, man, look, you've had these situations already several times. I mean, this was the first one that was like Memphis, Hawaii was like overnight before that. I mean, Miami, we heard that they had their COVID issues and they just didn't even travel to El Paso for the Sun Bowl, and now Central Michigan's playing in that game against Washington State in a few days. But you had the Fenway Bowl today. That got canceled, Virginia, SMU. I just hope, Brian, I hope.
Something
we have a situation Friday.
People are going to lose their minds
What do you do Friday? What happens if Georgia or Alabama or Michigan or Cincinnati, one of the four teams, has some issue? Are you really going to say forfeit and move one of those teams on? You can't.
We riot if so. I know if I was a Georgia fan, I would riot. I mean, like, that can't happen. And why are they coming out last week and saying, oh, it'll be a forfeit? What? Huh? Shut up. Shut that up. I don't want to hear that nonsense. Like, can you imagine being a Georgia fan? Well, I can't. 40 years without a natty. 41? Yeah. 41 years. Like, how many tens of thousands of days is that? But anyhow, and then they just like say you can't play because of COVID. Like, and I don't want to ruffle feathers here, but like, has one athlete, whether it be NFL, NHL, college football, college anything, has one athlete had to go to the hospital with COVID in the last 2 years? No, or I'm not aware of it. Like, and we're all these hundreds of games and whatnot just canceled. If they're vaccinated, why are they even testing them? I heard Alabama wasn't even testing because they're like 100% vaccination or maybe very, very close, something like that. Like, why are they and why are my Hawks getting so screwed by the NBA when they're canceling games for other teams? Every single player on the Hawks except for Cam Reddish is tested positive for COVID, and the Hawks haven't had any postponements.
But Trae Young came back the other night.
Yeah, to play with a G League squad and Cam Reddish.
Did you see what the Raptors have thrown out before last night against the Sixers, against the Cavaliers? That was worse than G League, what they threw out there. They still played that game.
I've never even heard of these guys that are on the Hawks roster. I've never heard of them. Don't know where they went to college, and I'm good at that. I mean, I pretty much know where everybody in the NBA went to college, most of them. And like, I've never even heard of these. Who is Chris Clemens? Who? Don't know.
But I want to go back to your point, and somebody said this, which is it's accurate. There wasn't one game canceled this year, right, in the regular season of college football due to COVID?
Cal and USC got pushed back a couple weeks, right?
They got pushed back.
Right.
It still got played.
Yeah, I don't think any of them got canceled, I don't think.
But now you have the bowls. What were we at, 4 or 5, I think, that have been canceled. The Arizona Bowl now is off the board because Central Michigan left that game, and they just said the Barstool thing, they just said forget about it. They're not going to play that game. But I don't know what what's the risk here, Brian? That let's go back to NC State UCLA for a second. What is they play that game? Is UCLA thinking they don't want to get NC State sick, or they were short on depth? What's the rationale behind all that?
There's no rationale in any of this madness, all this nonsensical BS. There's no rationale. It's all a bunch of garbage, if you ask me. What do I know?
Let's talk about the games, Brian. Oh, by the way, did you have anything yesterday?
2-1. I was all over the Gophers first half and game. Auburn was a small opinion. And when they did take that 13-10 lead, because I had Auburn finishing a parlay, I did hedge back a little bit with Maryland plus 2.5 because in the parlay I had Auburn pick them. And then I had Air Force. So I went 2-1 yesterday. It's 3-1 to me, damn it. NC State was the winner. Darn it.
Let's look at today. Maryland's now laying 4 to Virginia Tech in the Pinstripe Bowl in the Bronx, Yankee Stadium. And Virginia Tech now going through a coaching change. And what do we have tonight? We have three teams out of the 6 today with coaching changes, or different coaches are going to have next year. But what are your thoughts here? The Hokies getting 4. Maryland wasn't great this year. Just you're getting big-time conferences to fill these spots. But, any opinion on this game?
Yeah, and look, let me be clear. It's a small opinion, and both of these teams are horrible. But I think Maryland is way more motivated. They haven't been to a bowl since 2016. Also, they didn't have a coaching change, and now they have had 7 players enter the portal, but none of them saw like huge playing time this year, whereas the Hokies have had 5 starters opt out to go to the draft. Obviously, the coaching staff is gone. The quarterback, who's terrible, Braxton Burmeister, he's gone. So Connor Blumrick is starting, and they not only have those 5 starters that are opted out, they've also got a ton of guys that have entered the portal. I mean, Virginia Tech is without a ton of personnel and the coaching change. At least Maryland's still got its coaches, and they haven't been to a bowl since 2016, so they're more motivated. I mean, Vatek is probably the only team I'd lay a few points with Maryland too, but it's just really just fade Vatek, and it's still a small opinion.
Looking at Maryland, Brian, they started 4-0. They went 2-6 down the stretch, but look at the 6 losses. Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Minnesota, Ohio State, and Iowa. That's a rough-ass schedule that they had, and they only beat Rutgers and Indiana down the stretch.
Yeah, both these teams are terrible, like I said. I mean, it's just fading Vatek, which, they had that nice win against North Carolina early in the year, which was just UNC's O-line playing terrible and Sam Howell being forced into mistakes. I think he had 3 picks that game. But, yeah, Vatek, look, they did beat Virginia to end the year. But, Virginia's not that good either. They beat Duke. They beat Georgia Tech. They beat Richmond and Middle Tennessee.
And North Carolina wasn't even as good as we saw that Howell had no weapons this year.
Yeah, they were not very good. Yeah, I mean, both of these teams are terrible, but I think Vatek is more terrible as they are construed, if you will, right now with their personnel and coaching staff, makeshift coaching staff.
So the Cheez-It Bowls this afternoon, the legendary Cheez-It Bowl, Clemson and Iowa State, two teams that two of the biggest underachievers this year in college football. Iowa State had big expectations. What's so funny about Clemson, I mean, I think all of us together don't like Dabo. I think we all think that he's kind of full of it, and he tries to portray this thing of kids need to be playing for their education and this and that. And it's like, we want to get paid. And it's like, you can't get paid. Only I can get paid making $90 million a year. And it's like all this other stuff with him. But I will say this about Dabo. 9-3 is a pretty good job considering Clemson's always 11-1 or 12-0, but 9-3, it seemed like a horrible season, but it wasn't that bad of a season.
Yeah, they finished pretty strong. They won 5 in a row to end the year, went 4-1 against the spread. The only non-cover was, 44-7 win over UConn as a 41-point home favorite. They're probably off their 2 best performances of the year. They smash Wake 48-27, and South Carolina, they go in there at night, and South Carolina beat Auburn and Florida at night late in the year at home, and Clemson goes in there and wins 30-0. And Iowa State will be without Breece Hall, 1,472 rushing yards, 20 touchdowns, 5.8 yards per carry. 2 of their better wide receivers, Joe Skates, Tariq Milton, are gone into the portal. The 2020 Co-Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year, Isheem Young, he's gone into the portal. He had 55 tackles, 2 picks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery this year. And another starting corner, Kim Monty King, who had 29 tackles, 1 pick, 1 fumble recovery. He's also gone. So, and Iowa State went 7-5 straight up, not 9-3 like Clemson. I think Clemson is the play here. That's who I'm on.
They started 0-7 against the spread and went 4-1 ATS down the stretch. So, they got that lucky cover against FSU on that ridiculousness.
That was my fault. I backed FSU. When I back FSU, I do not win. Now, it was a push for me. I had bought the hook to +10, but I made that play happen because anytime I bet FSU something, they don't cover.
Iowa State, Brock Purdy dropped off too this year, right?
Yeah, he did. Now, he, his receiving core wasn't as good, but yeah, he did drop off, and they were just a disappointment all year. I think I ignorantly had them in. I want to say I had them in my preseason top 10. There was a lot to like about them coming back, but it just did not pan out. The turnovers against Iowa, and that game kind of set up bad tone for them the rest of the year.
So the Alamo Bowl, Brian, wraps up tonight. Alamo Bowl is always kind of like a wacky game, and it's Oregon and Oklahoma. And Cristobal's gone from Oregon. Lincoln Riley's gone from Oklahoma. So you have all that uncertainty going on with those two. Oklahoma had all the issues at quarterback going back and forth this year. Oklahoma right now laying 6.5 to Oregon. I mean, how motivated is Oregon? There's one thing I do know, Brian, and I had this number every year. I don't remember it exactly, but I'll dig it up. Pac-12 losers, Pac-12 championship losers, they do not fare well in bowl games. They do not. So, and Oregon with everything going on, losing their head coach. What do you think about this one with UO and OU?
Well, the reports on Monday from the Oregon beat writers were that more than 30 players weren't at practice due to opt-outs, injuries, and COVID protocols. Now, I'm not positive. I mean, maybe there's a chance a few of them or some of them are able to clear protocol. I don't really know all the details there. I don't know that those details are available. But, this team was 9-1, ranked in the top 4 of the CFP rankings. Trying to get to the CFP. They go to Utah. They get blown out 38-7. They bounce back in their rivalry game. They beat Oregon State, but then they lose to the Utes again 38-10, amidst all the rumors. Cristobal to Miami. Cristobal was very popular at Oregon. He takes off. Joe Moorhead, the former Mississippi State coach, their OC, he takes off to be the head coach at Akron. And now, obviously, Kayvon Thibodeau, obviously he is opting out, is going to be a top 3 or 4 pick, maybe number 1. And, they also lost CJ Verdell, running back, veteran running back I've had for years due to injury. And now all these absences. This team does not want to be there. Now, I know Oklahoma, I just think the whole Oklahoma dynamic is a lot different. And one more thing, Oregon's next coach, Dan Lanning, is in Miami, getting ready with Georgia for the DC role. You got Stoops, who is, still kind of a popular figure. I think he even still has an office in the football building, if I'm not mistaken. So he's familiar. And Venables is out killing it on the recruiting trail. Now they've lost, Rattler, which doesn't really matter unless QB1 gets hurt today. But they did lose Stogner, the tight end, who also transferred to South Carolina with Rattler, and they lost one of their better receivers in Jaden Hasselwood. But I think the Sooners' motivation and dynamic, I think they're pissed off at Lincoln Riley, not like sad or disappointed, which I think Oregon is. And I think they're probably fired up for Venables, and he's out there just killing it on the recruiting trail right now. So I think Oklahoma wants to make a statement, kind of shoot a middle finger to Lincoln Riley. And I know Oklahoma's been bad against the number all year. I've faded them a lot. But with all this personnel missing for Oregon, this is my favorite play of the day, not the bowl season. I'm not nearly as bullish on these games today as I was yesterday, but I'm on Oklahoma.
Well, the other thing, too, with the Lincoln Riley situation, Brian, is like Billy Napier, for instance. Everybody can understand leaving Louisiana, go to Florida, go from the Sun Belt to the SEC. There's no disputing that. You're like, okay, good for you. Good luck, all that. But Oklahoma is a pretty good program. I'm not saying USC isn't a good program, but for you to bail like that, I agree. It's kind of like, why? Like, you built something here. You had these quarterbacks that went to the NFL. A lot of good players went to the NFL. We're going to go to the SEC in a few years. Why are you going to the Pac-12 to just live in LA and be at USC?
It was lame, man. It was really lame. And Stoops, I think he has gas in the tank as we speak, and he stepped aside early so Oklahoma wouldn't lose Lincoln Riley. He was, very unselfish in that and gave Lincoln Riley his first head coaching job. He's made a lot of money. They had a lot of success, and they're going to move to the SEC, and it's going to get, more difficult, and he's going to bolt where he has a smaller degree of difficulty because outside of Oregon in the Pac-12, nobody's going to be a consistent juggernaut, and you've got that hotbed of recruiting. But California is the worst place in America since the pandemic started, in my humble opinion. And for him to take off for California was lame in my mind.
But at least the good news is USC bought his houses or something.
Oh yeah, have fun with all those taxes, even though you got a nice new house and whatever.
Telling you, he's going to live down the street from Colin Cowherd. They're going to be neighbors.
Like I said, lame.
Any thoughts right now, even though we're a few days out on these two semifinal games Friday?
I I took Alabama -7 in the first half. Now, they haven't been a first half juggernaut this year at all. I'm not even sure what their record is. It's probably below 500, but most of those numbers have been in the high double digits. This is a single digit number. I don't think Alabama's going to blow Cincinnati out. And at the same time, I say I do lean to them to cover, but I just think over the course of 60 minutes, they'll eventually get some separation. Mechie's a big loss. I'm just not sure that Cincinnati's O-line is, and I know Ritter can scramble and all that, but I just don't know. I don't think Cincy's going to score many points. That their defense will keep them in it for a while. But I think eventually, kind of like the Notre Dame game last year, just it's not going to be a complete runaway, but I think Alabama will just eventually get ahead of the number and cover. But I like it in the first half better. And, you know, I know Georgia and Michigan, most people think defense, and understandably so, and Georgia was a huge under team all year long, but this is a very low total. The Michigan seen the over cash in 3 straight, and those combined scores were 77 against Maryland, 69 against Ohio State, and they even got to 45 with Iowa, one of the worst offenses ever. And, you know, the number is sitting there at 40. 45 is a key number on a total. So if it's 45.5, I'd buy the half point to 45. But you look at Michigan's schedule, like most of their unders were against teams that just had horrible offenses, like Rutgers, like Washington, like Northwestern, like Indiana on November 6th. They were either on a 3rd or 4th string quarterback that game. And when they played teams with offenses that have a pulse, like Sparty, you know, there you had a combined score of 70. Against Nebraska, you had a combined score of 61. Even the Wisconsin game got to 55, and that was before Wisconsin's offense started clicking. That was October 2nd. And look, you know, Georgia, you know, they can score. They can score, and it's just a low number. I like the over. I have no idea on the side with Georgia and Michigan. I don't know where. I think Michigan's probably in a better place mentally, psychologically, after Georgia dominated all year and then to just get smashed like that. I kind of wonder where they are mentally.
I don't feel great about Georgia simply because you're playing a really good Michigan team. Then you got to get Bama again. So it's not like saying, all right, Bama beat you, but I mean, unless Bama loses to Cincinnati, but Bama beat you and okay, we still have a shot. We can reset ourselves. No, they're waiting for you if you get through Michigan, who beat Ohio State down and also won the Big Ten championship in convincing fashion over Iowa. So you say, oh, great. Now we got to face them again, try to beat them again.
You're facing the same thing.
It doesn't seem a good spot.
You're facing the same. I mean, I know no Mechie, but like Alabama has an enormous advantage at quarterback and in head coaching, and that's a great start. That's what I said before the SEC championship game. I mean, when you got the better quarterback and the better coach by far, you're in business more often, way more often than not.
Brian Edwards, you can find him on Twitter at VegasBEdwards, and also we will have our best bet video for the semifinal games coming up later. Well, the semifinal games are Friday, but we'll have the video out probably later today, and you can check that out from Brian Edwards, who does a great job covering college football as well as the NFL, NBA, college basketball. As long as college basketball plays some games eventually, then we'll be fine. But Brian, thank you so much for the time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, K-Raj.
All right, there is Brian Edwards, and always like talking to Brian about college football. DraftKings, you know about the GOAT. He's your friend. You can be his friend. Just wear that crown like him. The king of competitions, DraftKings Championship Series is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's tournament of champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time, the GOAT. That's right, our buddy on the screen. You can wear that crown as proudly as him. Check it out today at DraftKings.com. All right, let's take a look at some NBA here before we escape. And a very busy night inside the league. Let's go through it. Knicks and the Pistons start off in Detroit. and the Pistons, who, again, down a lot of players, and it doesn't matter, they're 5-27. But the Knicks laying 7.5. They just beat the Pistons at the Garden. That was a game where the Knicks were in control. Detroit came back, made it close, but then New York pulled away. But the Knicks, though, trying to climb back towards 500. And Tibbs' team just slowly getting there. Had that big Christmas Day win over the Hawks. Granted, decimated Hawks team, but wins are wins at this point. Hornets and the Pacers from Indiana. And these two teams have played high-scoring games already this season, 2 high-scoring games, both in Charlotte. Now they're meeting for the first time in Indiana. And the last time that the Hornets went to Indiana, I don't know if you remember, they remember this, the Hornets. They lost in that in the play-in tournament, 144-117 to the Pacers. And so far, Charlotte's beaten Indiana by 1 and by 3 this year. Both games went over the total. And very high total, again, at 227.5. The last total between these teams was 216.5. So high total. Charlotte's won 2 straight. Pacers, they have been up and down the whole season. And Miles Bridges, he's still sidelined for Charlotte. But again, with all these different, quarantine rules we're seeing from 10 to 5 days, now we'll see some players probably come back a little bit faster. Clippers and the Celtics in Boston. Clippers beat the Celtics the first time they met out in L.A., and now they're hooking up in Boston. Jason Tatum's still out for the Celtics. He'll come back, I'm sure, in a few days. He's in the COVID protocol. Clippers, they are coming off back-to-back home losses to the Nuggets and the Nets. Now they get the Celtics. The Clippers' offense has struggled without Paul George, and who knows when Kawhi's coming back. But this Clippers team desperately needs to get some offense going. And Boston, who had their issues against Minnesota a few nights ago, they I don't have a lot of faith in this game going over the total. The Hawks and the Bulls played a high-scoring game back 2 nights ago in Atlanta. Bulls pulled away and won. Trae Young returned for Atlanta. But as Brian mentioned, the Hawks, they've had just issues trying to fill out their roster at this point because pretty much all their guys are in the COVID protocol. But the Hawks getting 8.5 against Chicago tonight, and the Bulls, they continue to play well. Billy Donovan's still the COVID protocol, the head coach. So we'll see when he returns. But Chicago now laying 8.5. They laid 3.5 the other night. Now it's up to 8.5. Lakers and the Grizzlies in Memphis and LA, they outlasted Houston last night. Game easily went over the total. Lakers covered somehow in that game against the Rockets. A desperate win for the Lakers, desperate team. And LeBron James led LA in that game. Russell Westbrook also, even though he has some interesting highlights during the game if you watch it. And Russell has dropped off considerably, but still, this Lakers team, big spot tonight at Memphis. They lost at Memphis last time they played them laying 4. Now they're getting 5.5. Anthony Davis still out. Memphis off that exciting win at Phoenix a few nights ago on that John Morant layup in the final seconds. But Memphis now laying a nice amount of points here. They've not been great as a home favorite covering numbers, but we'll see what LA does here with no rest. No Jimmy Butler for the Heat. They're in San Antonio tonight to face the Spurs, and the Heat, their roster's all decimated too due to COVID. Spurs laying 5.5, and San Antonio, they did lose to Utah a few nights ago. They did cover. They had a nice little comeback in the final few minutes to get within the number against the Jazz. But San Antonio's played a little bit better of late because they had a very slow start to the season. Thunder and the Suns out in Phoenix. Oklahoma City, they lost at Sacramento last night. They were 10-2 against the spread in their previous 12 on the road, now 10-3. They just covered at Phoenix a few nights ago, getting 15. Now they're getting 14.5. And the Suns, off that loss to Memphis, losing to Golden State. Phoenix really needs a bounce back here. I don't think I feel comfortable laying 14.5 with them, though. Jazz and the Blazers in Portland, and it looks like Donovan Mitchell's still out for Utah tonight. They said he missed 2 games. He missed the San Antonio game, and probably tonight, then he should be back after that. But Jazz laying 6.5. Blazers off a blowout loss to the Mavs a few nights ago. They gave up a ton of points. Portland closes a 3-point favorite in that game. Now they're getting 6.5 here. High total, 228.5 between these two Northwest Division rivals. And the final game, Mavs and Kings in Sacramento. Kings off that win over the Thunder last night. Now they are flipped to an underdog. Sacramento's actually played well against Dallas. They beat them 3 times last year. Lost in Dallas earlier this season in a matinee game on a Sunday. But they've seen a lot of unders cash in these games, and Sacramento's been a good under team with no rest. 4-2 to the under in that spot. And each of the past 5 meetings between these teams have gone under the total. So that's another thing to keep an eye on with these two teams coming up as they wrap up play tonight. And a whole mess of college basketball among the matchups. Seton Hall, Providence. That's a good one there in the Big East. You have Butler, DePaul in the Big East. SEC, Arkansas, Mississippi State. Also Tennessee and Alabama. They are meeting up. LSU, Auburn. So SEC's got a lot of big games tonight inside of college basketball. And let's just hope all these games get in without an issue. Let me tell you about now DraftKings, or BetMGM, excuse me. Talk about DraftKings a little bit earlier with the GOAT. Now BetMGM, the king of sports books. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line. And if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, that's for new players only. Must be 21 years or older to play. And eligible in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. Mike, thanks again to Brian Edwards for joining me here on today's edition of the Daily Insider. Tomorrow, we will not have Vince Akins on. He's going to be on Friday. So usually Vince Akins comes on Thursday with his trends. He'll be on Friday. And we should have championship trends for the college football playoff and NFL Week 17. So look forward to that Friday. Tomorrow, Mike Morgan, ESPN play-by-play announcer, college football, college basketball. He will join us coming up at noon on Thursday to discuss plenty of college football, get his thoughts on some of these games coming up. So he's going to join us coming up tomorrow at noon. And he recalled the Cure Bowl earlier this year, Coastal Carolina. And that was an interesting finish to that game. I got to ask him about that too. But he's going to join us coming up at noon tomorrow here on the Daily Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.